Ooh, thanks, robot lady. I also don't want you to get too deep and stuck in this because it's not a massive part of your assignment. So I want you to just sort of think about, this is content that I can apply in my assignment, and I'll sort of point out where. But don't get super bogged down in it, because it's partly there for extra information for you as well. And in particular, if you're wanting to dive a lot more into marketing, it's designed to give you a sort of heads up on some of the key concepts in marketing, and then thinking about how you might apply them. So let's just kind of crack in. And it is a fairly lecture. So I'll just kind of walk through it. I now can't see you guys. Actually, maybe I'll change this so that I can see you guys. So that if you have any questions, you can say, "Oi, what are you talking about?"
Just on our screen is the PowerPoint's there, but it's also got like the meeting has been recorded banner, like right in the middle.
Oh, really? Okay. Let me quickly change this so that it is. Are you able to click on that message? It's a new thing in.
Oh yeah, there we go, it's gone.
Yeah. Zoom have only just introduced it, and it's a bit weird. All right, let's see if that's any better. That's Noodle barking, if you can hear him. All right, so yeah, deep dive smash into entrepreneurial marketing. Oh my God. Every time someone walks past on our road, the dogs go ballistic. So I apologize. Can you hear them a lot?
It's fine. Yeah, it's okay.
All right. So as I mentioned earlier, because we missed last week's class, I've put the content up there for you to take a look at, and it's fairly dry. So feel free to just have a look through the slides, and then also have a look at the, there's a link there to some information on intellectual property that I've then also converted into a quiz just to make it a little bit more interactive. So feel free to have a dig into that content if you want. And so this session is all about marketing. And if we think back to our business model canvas, our marketing component sits in these two sections of our business model canvas, where we're thinking about how do we build relationships with our customers, and how do we connect with customers through different channels that we use. So they can be marketing channels, retail channels, experience channels, whatever it is. And so if we're thinking about where this sits on our business model canvas, these kinds of activities, they're the boxes that we'd be popping these ideas into. And going back to this central idea of feasibility of a venture, we've got this sort of guiding principle that has sort of come up throughout the semester, which is the thing that we're trying to avoid, which is this fundamental mistake that is common and is one of the key reasons that the business failure rate is so high, is that people think, I've got this great idea, I want to create this business that does blah, or sells this thing, or does this thing. And what we've been trying to reinforce is being very customer centric. So what is it that the customer needs and wants, and are they willing to pay for it? So if the problem that we're trying to solve isn't a reality for the customer, they either don't experience that problem, or they don't perceive that problem as something they're wanting to solve, or they can't afford to fix it, or they don't want to pay to fix it, then it's going to be very hard for our venture to succeed, because our customers are not going to be interested in what we're trying to provide for them. And so when that comes to marketing, I've just got a few little definitions and this sort of stuff to help centralize the idea of marketing in that context of what does it mean to have an entrepreneurial venture and what is the role of marketing in that. And so I've highlighted this quote down the bottom because we've been talking all the way along about how do we create value. So when we're creating value, we're solving a problem for our customer. And so what marketing is about is trying to help us to solidify this process that we've been looking at is in terms of how do we understand what our customers' needs are? What do they want? What are the problems they want solved? And how can we best deliver value to them in the sense of solving those problems, because they will value those solutions, and making sure that that aligns and matches is the key purpose of marketing. And a lot of people tend to think, when they think marketing, they're thinking about sort of advertising, you know, like how do you build a social media presence and promote your stuff to your customers? And that's one of our 4 Ps, which we'll get to in a second. But so I want to try and get you thinking a little bit more broadly about what marketing is and thinking beyond just the idea of what we call promotion. And when we've got an entrepreneurial venture, it's slightly different to the way that we market for established ventures. And so a lot of the potential ways that you might have been thinking about marketing in the past, or the sort of role models that you've seen in terms of marketing, are typically established ventures. But when we're an entrepreneurial venture, there's some key differences, because often we don't have the resources that established businesses have. You know, we've got nothing. We're normally taking a lean startup approach. So we're trying to do things as we go iteratively to try and find our market and understand who our customer is. So it's we don't necessarily have resources that we can just pour into our marketing process. So we're trying to do it very thriftily. We don't have any customers. So often in established businesses, our customers are a key resource that we can use to then understand them, try new things with them, and use them to promote to when we have new products and services. But as an entrepreneurial venture, we're starting, so we don't necessarily have any customers that we can connect with. So we've got to try and get that rolling and find those potential customers and connect with them. We've also got no track record or reputation. So what that means is that we can't use what's called social proof. So say something like, if you've got reviews for your products, that's an example of social proof that in regular marketing for established ventures, we can use those to help connect to potential new customers and to market what we do by getting other people to talk about us. But we don't have that. And we've got no what's called economies of scale. So this is where we've got the ability to take our existing asset base and use it to build build a new or develop our asset base. So for example, what I mentioned before about the market share, if we're an established business and we've got customers that buy our products, then we can use that customer base to introduce new products. And so we can scale off the back of our existing customer base. Whereas if we don't have any customers yet, we're not able to leverage off the assets that we have already to either, and say from a product perspective, you know, when we launch a new product, we're going to learn things about that product from customers. So we might then be able to improve it over time and scale according to what customers' feedback is on our product. But if we haven't launched yet, we're guessing. So how do we know that our product is going to meet our customer needs? when we don't actually have any feedback in the market on our products yet. So in terms of music, we've got this sort of little analysis, really breaking down, trying to understand what it is that we do from a marketing perspective and what our customers get. And this has been written more from the perspective of like music consumers. So in your cases, so Lauren and Holly, this would probably be more from the perspective of the fans of the bands that you might be working with. And in your case, Jonty, it might be more from the perspective of the, are you still doing your mobile stage project?
Yeah.
Awesome. This would probably be more in terms of the punters that would come to those gigs. So think about it in the context of what you'll be doing, but keep this in mind in terms of the, I would call downstream effect, because ultimately the job of your ventures is to deliver these music experiences for consumers. And you're helping either your bands or your events to achieve this. So what we're wanting to do is create products and services in response to the unmet needs and desires of customers. So in the case of you, Holly and Lauren, your bands are trying to create music that will be of interest to their fan bases. And in your case, Jonty, your event promoters or event stages are trying to create events that whoever they're wanting to come to these events will want to come to. And so from the customer perspective, they've got these unmet needs and desires that we're trying to deliver to them. So again, in the case of you and Lauren and Holly, we've got fans out there somewhere that they don't even know it yet, but they can't wait to hear this music. And so your bands are there to fulfill that unmet need for music that they're going to love. And Jonty, in your case, there's people out there who have this unmet need that they don't know about to attend this awesome event. As a marketer, we also want to be pricing products to meet consumer perceptions of value. And customers perceive value in relation to price. And we'll dig into this a little bit more in a minute when we get into one of our P's is price. But it can be a bit, there's a real art and science to pricing, which we're not going to get too deep into today. But it's about perception of value. So, for example, bottled water, you might be willing to pay 50 cents for a bottle of water at the supermarket, but you're willing to pay $5 at a venue or at an event. Even though it's the same bottle of water, there's an expectation that's created there. And sometimes that expectation is just that you don't have a choice. But at the same time, there's an acceptance of that, okay, I'm at this event and therefore the price of water is just going to be $5 and we've sort of gotten used to it. Whereas if you saw a bottle of water for $5 at the supermarket, you wouldn't buy it because you'd just go, that's ridiculous. And similarly, we can price things based on the value that we're infusing into that product. So an example like that might be things like where we can take something that is the same and we can create added perceptions of value by adding and tweaking it. So examples of this might be something like VIP tickets that you get an extra meet and greet, and people might be willing to pay 2 or 3 times the price of a ticket for this little bit of extra value. So we're dealing with perceptions. We also want to be, as music marketers, communicating the benefits of our products and services via promotion. So promotion is one of our P's. And we want to be listening to our customers in order to be able to do that. And so the post has arrived and my dog's going nuts again. So one of the key things that is often a mistake that companies make is they do what we call promote features of their product rather than the benefits of the product. And this is about helping us to always stay in the shoes of the customer. Is that barking? Can you hear me over the barking?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So what I mean by that is, say like the classic marketing campaign of the iPod. You guys maybe weren't even born at this, but it's sort of quite famous because it was such a clever marketing technique where Steve Jobs, I found an iPod the other day. I didn't even know I had one. So Steve Jobs held up an iPod and he said, this was the first generation, the very first iPod. He said, it's 1,000 songs in your pocket. And that was a classic example of communicating benefits to the customer rather than features. So he could have said instead, here's a gadget that has, 256 kilobytes of memory that you can download or store songs on and go into all the technical specifications, right? So that's what we call product features. It's this size, it, does this, this, and this. Customers don't care about that stuff. Customers want to know, how does it benefit them? And so the 1,000 songs in your pocket communicated really clearly and succinctly to customers what they got from buying this product. So I don't know if you guys remember those days where, you used to have towers of CDs and you'd play one CD at a time, or maybe you had a really fancy thing you could put 5 CDs in. But the idea of having 1,000 songs in your pocket was like mind-blowing. So communicating that key benefit of, instead of having this tower of CDs, you got this in your pocket and you got 1,000 songs. So what would, think about what would be the key benefits for your businesses that your customers might be interested in. So it's not so much about, we do this, this, and this in terms of what you're actually doing. It's what is the customer getting as a consequence of what you're doing. So say, for example, in your case, Jonty, you've got a mobile stage, but in terms of the customer benefit, what they're getting is a cheaper, super easy, and no hassle instant stage. So what do they want, and what do they get from buying what you do? Does that distinction make sense? So it's about getting into the customer's shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so as marketers, we want to be providing access to our products. So we'll get into this when we get into our P for place. This is something that is a lot more easy to think about when we're thinking about physical products, because we're going to need to put them in shops or on a website that we then ship things to people. But we do need to be thinking about, where do customers, how are they going to actually get what we do? So in your cases, in most cases, you'll be going to them, which is great. And in terms of the consumer, they're actually exchanging money for receiving those goods and services. But in your particular cases, this isn't such a big deal, because what you're doing is service-based and is more in, you're not going to have retail outlets and stuff like that, which adds a layer of needing to manage relationships and that sort of stuff. And then as a music marketers, we also need to provide customer service. So again, in the case of your two ventures, you guys will be sort of doing this yourselves in other businesses, or potentially in businesses as you grow. Maybe you'll need to have other people involved in your ventures that will be involved in different aspects of what you do. But, you know, as businesses, we actually supply those people to deliver the products and services to our customers. And then our customers are actually providing the consumption of those products and services, which can help fuel the music industry. So the more we can think of our customers as partners, the better we can think about how we integrate them and service them kind of as partners. You know, we're just not thinking of them as like people who buy our stuff, but as partners in our music venture and helping keep the industry alive, which is a really important part when we're thinking about music. All right, so let's dig into our 4 Ps. And again, remember that this is being recorded and is designed to give you a sort of heads up. So if you want to drill into any particular part at any time, you can come back to the recording, which I'll pop onto Student Web. So this will be fairly fast. So our first P is thinking about the product. And we try and differentiate our products. And when I say products, think services as well. So whatever it is that you are selling to your customers, what we want to be able to do is differentiate them in the minds of our customers. So again, we're always thinking from the customer's perspective. So whatever we're doing is in order to deliver to the customer. So it's not so much about what we do, but why we do it. And it's about thinking about what is the end result for the customer. And what I've got here, I won't do it today with you. I'd normally get you to run through this activity, but there's a link on Student Web in today's module that is a spreadsheet called competitor analysis, or something like that. We'll have a look in a minute. And it's a tool that you can use to compare what you offer to your competitors. So you might recall in your assignment template, there's a little table somewhere towards the start that is a competitor analysis. And it's got, you know, headings, things like pricing, market, size, etc., etc. And then what you do is you list each of your competitors and you analyze against those different criteria. You're totally welcome to use that, and it's quite a good template. This is an alternative one you can use if you want to. And this particular technique comes from a thing. There's a book and an associated methodology called the Blue Ocean Strategy. And what the purpose of Blue Ocean is to try and identify areas in the market where there's unmet needs and where there's a competitive gap. And the way that it works, so this is an example here of the analysis that's being done. And this is sort of assuming you were Netflix back when you were going to start up Netflix. And so what you do is you work out, well, what are the things that customers receive in terms of this product? And then you rate each of those things. So in this particular example, it's comparing Netflix to cable television. So what are the key product features or benefits for each of these two different methods of television? So one thing that cable TV does and has very prominently is things like commercials. Netflix doesn't have commercials at all. Netflix doesn't have news programs, but cable TV has a lot of that. And so what we do with this is we go through and we work out what are each of the kind of key factors that might be a determining, say, proposition in terms of our products and services. So what you want to do is think about who are your key competitors, and it's your competitors in the minds of your customer. So it's not necessarily who you would immediately think of as your customer, but what is the next best alternative for your customer? So, for example, Holly and Lauren, you know, a key competitor for you guys might be bands doing it themselves in terms of certain aspects of what you do. Your other competitors might be some of the big management companies. Some of your competitors might be people who specialize in social media. And so then what you want to do is sort of map out, well, what is it that they offer to your customers? And where do you sit compared to each of those competitors? So for example, if you were comparing do-it-yourself, you might have criteria like cost, right? And so do-it-yourself is going to be zero cost. So it's going to be very low. Whereas you guys might be sort of, you might rate yourself 4 out of 10 because you see yourself as, you know, as a really cost-effective, affordable service. And then one of the big players, so one of the big management companies, you might give them a 10 because they're really expensive. And so what this then enables you to do is kind of then sit back and go, okay, what is our key value proposition? And is it aligned to customer needs? So in this particular example, what you can see is that in the case of Netflix, they're not going to be competing, or they're not going to be communicating to their customers that, you know, what's really great about Netflix is parental content filtering or price, because, you know, this is basically saying that cable TV is a lot cheaper. But what we're really all about, right, what's really valuable to our customers is that you can watch on devices, you can watch full seasons of a TV show, which you can't do on cable TV, and you can watch anywhere, anytime. And so you start to see where what we call the value gap is compared to your competitors by rating yourselves compared to those competitors. So I'll let you do that if you want to at your own leisure, and just also be aware that it's there as a tool for you to start thinking about, well, what do we do and how is that different to our customers' next best alternatives? And so are we hitting the right mark for our customers in terms of what they need and want? And also, what do we want to be communicating as our value proposition? So you might remember back when we looked at our value proposition canvas. This is just a kind of recap from that, some of the ways that we can actually create value for our customers. So, you know, is it that we're cheaper than the next best alternative? Is it that we are newer? And what is it about being new that makes us better? Do we do a better job of it? So is our performance better than our alternatives? So have a think about those things in relation to your competitors and what you do differently to your competitors. So our next, our other way of thinking about this is to then distill this down into what we call a positioning statement. So a positioning statement is where you kind of go, this is what we are about. This is who we are as a business and what we stand for, and where we stand in our marketplace against our competitors. And this is a little template that you can use. And again, it's on Student Web if you want to have a play with it. And it's designed to distill down stuff that you have put in your value proposition canvas. So if you can see, if it's big enough on your screen, you might want to have a look at it in more detail. but it's a fill in the blanks that pulls content from your value proposition canvas. And it works like this. So you would write something like our, and then from your value proposition canvas, you can see, I don't know if you can read it, but it's here, it says products and services. So this is where you're pulling from your value proposition canvas what your products and services are. And then you would say helps. And then from your value proposition canvas, you would write in who your customer segment is, who want to, and then what your key jobs to be done from your value proposition canvas are. Then by, and you'd put in a verb here. So increasing, reducing, avoiding, whatever, a customer pain, the key customer pain, and another verb. So increasing, helping, whatever, the key customer gain. And then you say unlike, and then you put a key thing that your competitors do that or don't do, that is your differentiation. So just to illustrate this a little bit, because it's pretty, you know, it's a formula. So if I'm Spotify, just to use like an example. So if I was Spotify, I would say something like, our music streaming service helps. So my customer segment is music lovers who want to, jobs to be done, who want to access music easily, anywhere, anytime. By, so what's my customer pain? It might be something like having to find CDs. So it might be who want to access music anywhere, anytime by accessing a huge library of music with thousands and thousands and millions of songs, and adding a customer gain. So, and conveniently being able to create music libraries, music lists and libraries, and access music whenever they want. Unlike, and here I'm going to be comparing to, you know, say a key competitor. So let's say iTunes, and let's say iTunes at the point when, you know, they were buying a song rather than streaming. Unlike iTunes, where you have to purchase songs one by one. And so what you end up with then is a really clear statement of what is our business about, how is it different to our competitors, and what is it that is the key problem that we're solving for our customers. So it can help you really distill down what your value is in the marketplace. So it's just a tool that helps us do that. Is that making sense, Holly? You're looking confused. Yeah.
No, I'm just looking in.
Yeah.
I'm kind of taking notes as well.
Yeah. So it's just a distillation tool. And it can be it can also be really helpful if you're trying to work out exactly what you do because it's a formula, you kind of just fill in the blanks. And so it can really help you to kind of identify, well, what is it that we do? And then be able to test it potentially with different customers. So you might come up with a few variations of this, use it however you want, but you might, use it as your landing page on your website so that you've got a really clear statement to your customers about this is who we are and why we exist. But you also might come up with a few different versions and then get your customers to tell you which one's the best one, because then they're telling you, this is what you do for me. So it can just be helpful for that kind of stuff. All right. So our next P is price. And there's a stack of content here, so I don't want to get too bogged down. But often people just think that price is a pretty arbitrary thing. And there's many ways you can do it. Guessing probably isn't the best way. But typically what people tend to do, I notice, is that they try and benchmark. So they go, well, here's my competitor, this is what they're charging, so I'm just going to charge something similar. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as your value proposition is similar and aligned. So when we're thinking about pricing, and again, I don't want you to get overwhelmed and think, oh my God, I've got to do all this stuff. This is a much more deep dive that you can come back to whenever you want, if you want to drill into it and if it's relevant to you as well. But when we're thinking about setting prices, a big part of it is thinking about what is this communicating to our customer in terms of value. So they will use that to judge the value of our products and services. So if we charge too little, like if and often they're not even aware of it, but sometimes things are too cheap, and so then customers get the perception of it not being very good. So we've got to balance our price in terms of what our customers can afford and the perception that it creates in their minds. We can use it to set objectives in terms of, say, for example, if we want to sell a lot of something, we might set it we might make it cheaper compared to if we want to. Sometimes it's better to make something more expensive and sell fewer of them, because you actually make more profit. So if I'm making 10 cents profit on something, I've got to sell a lot more of that thing than if I'm making $1 profit. So we need to be thinking about our profit when we're thinking about pricing, as much as we're thinking about the actual price that the customer's paying, because there can often be a real trade-off. And this is part of what our financial modeling helps us to do, is to go, well, am I better selling, 1,000 things at 10 cents, or am I better selling 10 things at $1? Because of the effort that's involved in actually selling each of those things, it might end up being a lot more profitable to sell fewer. And we can then use that to create a profile. So there's a whole lot of science that goes into pricing, where it's called demand elasticity, where basically the higher the price, the less demand, and you try and get a sweet spot in terms of that. And so the cheaper we make something, and this is obviously more the case in physical products often, but if we think about, say, a subscription-based service, Spotify is going to have a lot more customers who are happy to have a free subscription than ones who are going to pay for a premium subscription. And so we can think about the demand that is likely to be created at different price points, and think about how that would impact our business, because there's going to be costs that go along with the prices that we set as well. It helps us establish our cost structures, helps us determine our break-even point, right? So this is what we looked at when we looked at our COGS, which was, how much does it cost us to make our product? And our break-even point is where we're selling it for the same price as it costs us to produce it. Helps us determine different strategies compared to our competitors and industry. So, there's techniques like Aldi uses one a lot called a loss leader. So anytime, they do those specials where they'll have, like a chainsaw for $50 or something. And they'll often those products, or sometimes those products, are actually sold at less than the cost less than it costs to make the products. So they're actually making a loss on those products. But the whole point is to drive traffic. So you might see this where people offer something for free, where they'll go, say something like in social media, you might see people who offer a free diagnostic of your social media profile, or a free how-to guide. And so it's cost them something to make that, but they're giving it away, or they're charging, you know, virtually nothing for it in order to drive traffic. So, and then what you might try and do is then try and have something beyond that that you're going to make a massive profit on, because it's about bringing people in and then getting the profit out of them afterwards. And then, yeah, we can use promotional pricing tactics that are exactly what I was just describing. So we want to be sort of thinking about these things. And yeah, so customers use price as a measure of quality. So if you're charging too little, they might just go, oh yeah, you know, and I'm sure you've experienced this where, say if you get a free ticket to something, you might not go, whereas if you've paid for the ticket, you kind of feel compelled to go, because you've got what we call skin in the game, right? So you've paid money for this, and so it puts you in the mindset that you want to get the value that you've paid for. But in terms of music, you know, this can often be difficult because sometimes when we're thinking about pricing, musical tastes and the purchasing power of our customers becomes a real factor, right? So if you're marketing Metallica, your pricing mechanisms, because it's, you know, adults, probably metal fans, what is it about those customers and their purchasing power? What can they afford? How much are they willing to spend compared to, say, if you're marketing the Wiggles? And it could be that, you know, parents are willing to pay a lot more for their kid to see the Wiggles than a metal fan is willing to pay Metallica, or it could be the other way around. But we need to be thinking about this stuff in terms of the purchasing power of our customers. This is a load of information that is just designed to sort of get you to sort of think about the different ways you can approach pricing. So the most common one that you would think of is, all right, this is what it costs me to make this thing, and so I'm going to charge more than that, and that might be some standard percentage. You can also price based on demand. So if you're selling something that's super hot right now, you can charge a lot more for it than if you are trying to sell something that isn't there isn't a high demand for it. So this is, you know, we see this in events where, you know, once an event reaches a point where it knows it's going to sell out, they can almost charge whatever they want for it, which is why we've got, you know, we're seeing increasing pricing tickets for events and that sort of stuff. Whereas if you're a new venture, unless you're hitting a very, very underserviced market, so let's use an event example. If you are launching, say, a new festival, and nobody knows about your festival and it's not a very niche genre, you may not be able to set very high prices. But if you get, say, I don't know, say you're mates with Katy Perry, you're probably going to be able to charge quite a lot because there's going to be a lot of demand for tickets to Katy Perry. So we see this, you know, like that's why a lot of local bands struggle, because there just isn't a huge demand for their shows. And so building up that demand becomes important. And so as a starting out band, you're probably going to be using what we call market penetration, which is to try and actually get the classic thing in music, which we all hate, as, you know, oh, it's good for exposure. So you get paid nothing, which is then it And that in many ways is that loss leader technique of just trying to get an audience or get yourself in front of an audience or get yourself in front of a customer base to try and establish that connection with them. And then ideally to be able to sell them something more profitable afterwards. And I think that is often sometimes the challenge for established artists is, they're working on a loss leader model all the time because they're just trying to get gigs anywhere, anytime. But then they've got merch, and often that's about it. So being able to then, once you've got that connection with the customer, to then be able to sell them something higher priced and more profitable afterwards can be a real challenge for bands. And then often music ventures are also just doing survival pricing. And so this is typical in a very competitive market. So for example, if you've got lots of other people doing something similar to you, it means that from a customer's perspective, they've got a lot of choice. So thinking back to our porters, our customer power is very, very high and very low in comparison to us. Whereas if we are doing something completely different, it's going to generate demand if that something that's different is of interest to our customers and they want it. So we want to be sort of positioning our prices in respect to the value that we're creating in the market against our competitors. So that's why getting clear on what we call competitive advantage. So what is it that we do better than our competitors, and making sure that's aligned to a customer need is really important because we can charge more for it. All right. I'm not going to go into this. I'll let you guys have a look at it. The slides will also be up on Student Web if you'd rather just look through the slides and watch the video. But it's just sort of talking about different scales of pricing from, super budget through to super premium. So you can think of this as, like Jetstar through to business class on some super fancy airline. And what does that mean in terms of different price points as you go through, and where that sits in terms of customer perception and affordability. All right, place. How are we going? Are we still in the zone? We're getting smashed?
Can I run to the bathroom for 2 seconds while we're like?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
I'm going to pause the video, resume recording. So click on the thing if has it popped up again? Oh, good. All right, so let's dig into place. So again, as I mentioned, this is a lot more important if you've got like a distribution chain that is part of what you do as a venture. But you also want to be thinking about what we call the customer journey. So first of all, and we did this when we looked at our business model canvas, so this is a little bit of a refresher, but you sort of going to be wanting, it's called place because you're going to be thinking about where and how is the customer experiencing this. So in terms of discovery, this is a big deal when we're starting up. How are we going to get our customers to know that we exist? And so where are we going to be? Where are they going to be? And where are we going to be in order for them to know that we exist? And this doesn't necessarily mean like, a geographical location. So, if you're making, I don't know, if you make iPhones, place in terms of discovery might be something like, Apple stores and Telstra shops, where they're going to wander in and go, oh, there's a new iPhone. But it can also be things like advertising or word of mouth. So how are customers actually going to find out that you exist? And what are going to be the places that you can target in order to make that happen? So, Lauren and Holly, in your case, it could be things like word of mouth, I imagine, is going to be a really big deal in terms of getting customers to know that you exist. But you might do all like other different things. Maybe you go and speak at an industry forum, or you build your social media presence, and then find ways to get your social media presence out there somehow. Jonty, maybe you're going to start thinking about, maybe you would, it's up to you, but maybe if you're going to be directly targeting, say, the event coordinators in local councils, this is me just totally guessing what you might do. You might be able to find out, get a database of them and send them a letter with a flyer or something like that. And so at each step, so we think of this as the customer journey. First of all, how do they find out about you? Then, how are they going to decide to choose you? So what is going to be involved in them making that decision? And what tools and resources are you going to need to provide them to make those decisions? So that could be as simple as something like building a relationship with them, so that they go, yeah, I really want to work with Holly and Lauren because they're ace. Or it could be as substantive as you need to provide a comparative analysis. You see this on websites sometimes where they'll say, here's the features of what we do and here's what our competitors do, and they'll have little tick boxes. So that's a process to help the customer evaluate, should I go with this option or with this option? How and where are customers going to actually buy your products and services? So in a lot of your cases, that's going to happen, it might even not be a formal thing. It's not like people buying an iPhone where they're going to buy it on a website or in a shop. But they might just say, oh yeah, let's start working together. Or in your case, Jonty, it might be via email where they're just saying, yep, okay, we're going to contact you. Then how are they going to actually receive the products and use them? So if it's physical, that could involve how you're going to ship it to them. But in your cases, it's going to be a matter of what's going to be the process that you're going to use, which is going to be them actually receiving the product. And in your cases, that process is often going to be the product itself. So, Jonty, you're going to go and set up your stage and have this event run, and then you're going to take it away, and that is you delivering the product. In Lauren and Holly, your case, you're going to be doing things in the background, and then you're going to have these outputs which are, okay, here's your social media campaign, here's your brand, etc., etc. And then after sales, and this is often a forgotten part, because what is often forgotten by a lot of people is that an existing customer, it's much, much easier to sell to an existing customer. So thinking about how are you going to retain that customer and grow that customer. And I think Holly and Lauren, you guys have got a really good business model for thinking about this, where you might give people, you might sort of get them to start working with you on a particular thing. And as part of your after sales service, that's where you can start to kind of expand out that relationship with them. So it could be that they just come to you at the beginning and say, oh, look, we're just starting out, or I just need help with this one thing. And you go, great, let's get the ball rolling. And then as you start to build and deepen that relationship with them, you can start to be thinking about, okay, what's next with this customer? And also, after sales often involves managing the relationship if things don't go quite right. So again, depending on the nature of your business, this may or may not be a big deal, but often with goods. So again, if I make iPhones, what do I need to do if somebody has a problem with their iPhone? how am I going to manage that process? Jonty, in your case, it might be that, you know, you need to be able to be thinking about, okay, well, how do I secure the next booking with this customer? This is going to be an annual event, or maybe they have a program of events. I don't want to just sort of go in, go, yep, beauty, thanks, see you later, here's my invoice. But how do I actually keep cultivating this relationship and keep almost troubleshooting to kind of be going, well, I can see that they also need this, or this was a thing that was a bit of a hassle for them. So, you know, maybe you can see that it was really, because it was a local council, it was really difficult for them to get your contract in place and get you paid in time. And so what you're going to be thinking about in terms of after sales is thinking about, okay, next time what I'm going to do is get myself set up as a standard supplier with this local council. And so that's going to take away that hassle for my customer, because it's going to make it much easier for them to get me paid. So you're going to be wanting to try and really be thinking about and observing all the time, how can I improve this customer experience? All right, this is a little tool we can use for mapping this out. Again, I'm not going to go into it, just know that it's there on Student Web if you want to have a play with it. It's quite a good one to use to really start to think through, okay, how are we going to find out, how are we going to get people to know we exist? So what methods are we going to use? So this might be things like build social media profile, promote on such and such's Instagram page, you know, ask our existing customers to tell their friends about us. Like whatever it is that you're going to do would go in this green box. Then experience is where you would try and indicate what is the experience you want them to have in that process. So it might be something like, say at the discovery awareness component, you might say something like, I want them to think that we're really cool, or I want them to have an impression that I can make their life easier. So what is it that you want your customer to see, feel, hear, or do in this method that you're using? And then how might we measure this? So how would we know that this method or these methods that we're using are effective? So we might say use something like, you know, if we're doing some kind of social media campaign, we might use a click-through rate, or we might look at number of inquiries from potential customers. And so this is just a way of, you know, quite extensively mapping out how we're going to be marketing to our customers across these different phases of them going from being a potential customer to being a customer to being a raving fan of what we do. What are we going to be doing in each of those different stages? What do we want them to experience? And how do we know if it's working or not? So yeah, that's on Student Web if you want to have a play with it. And then our last P, promotion, which is what people tend to think about when they think about marketing. How do we actually communicate effectively with our customers? So we're not trying to tell them what to buy. We're trying to actually build our connection with them and solve their problems. And in terms of music, you know, this is an emotional experience. This is, you know, how do we get people to feel something that makes them want to do it again? And in your cases, how do we create an experience for these bands or these performance spaces that makes them go, yeah, that was a really great experience. I want to keep having that experience with these people. So in order to do that, we obviously want to be communicating benefits, as we talked about before. And this probably won't be a trap for you guys, purely because you're not an established business, and the kinds of businesses that you're looking at creating are going to be much more relationship based than just selling stuff. But it is often the case that people will just, if they're trying to launch a product, say, they just want to keep going, buy this product, buy this product, buy this product, it's awesome, rather than here's something you need and why you need it. All right, and so we want to be thinking about all these marketing activities, the way that we're going to be promoting our venture in an integrated sense. So all this sort of needs to tie together and be united. So Lauren and Holly, I know you guys are all about brands, so you know about how to integrate a clear brand into all of your marketing so that it has a unified message. And that positioning statement that we looked at before can be really helpful for starting to think about what is our brand, and then how is that going to flow through into all our marketing, into all of our promotions. So what do we stand for, and who do we provide value to, and how do we do that? Needs to kind of be integrated throughout all your marketing activities. And that's the end. This is just here to kind of remind us again that what we're trying to think about when we think about building a business is that we've got all these elements that actually make up the machinery of our venture, which is what we map out on our business model canvas. So what we've just looked at is, how do we start to build their customer relationships and the ways that we deliver our products and services to customers, who our customers are, how we're creating value for them, so how we're meeting their needs, and then how we're doing, what's our back, behind the scenes, our backstage, in terms of who we're partnering with, what we own in our business and what we're actually doing, and then what are the financial sides of it, so how we're making money and what are we spending money on. But this all sits within a broader environment that can either help or hinder our venture. So we need to understand the competitive environment that we exist within. So who are our competitors, who are our customers, and what kind of power do they have? How are we going to break into this market, and is it a really competitive market? And then also, what are the broader forces that are going to help or hinder our business? So we talked about that earlier in terms of using our pestle as partly an analytical tool, but just more an organizing tool for thinking about, all right, what might help or hinder our business in terms of broader social trends, broader economic trends, et cetera, and what impact might they have on our business? So that's the end of our content on marketing. Any questions, comments, thoughts on how this is relevant to your ventures and or your assignments?
Like, there's a bit of content there, but it's good that it's kind of broken up into that like circle of quarters, and then you can kind of like clearly see what angle of the, I don't know if angle's the right word, but I'm going to say angle of like marketing and stuff, and like with price and promotion and all that you can apply to your business. Like, it's good that it breaks it up a little bit, because then, if you kind of like look at all the content that we've had in the past with promotions and stuff, and it's all just like there, and then you're like, oh, well, how do I apply this, and like, what's an example? And so I think it was good that it was in like an easily identifiable way that we can apply it to what we're going to do for assignment 3, which is good.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, and that's a good prompt. So in terms of assignment 3, I mentioned there's that competitor analysis section. And then there's a whole marketing section, and obviously use the template for the prompts on what you should include. But this today, like this content that I've just gone through, is designed to get you sort of thinking about, okay, what would we do, which you would then write up into that report. So say, for example, in the example that you've been given of that music venture, there's like a stack of stuff in one of the appendices, which is all their marketing, and it's super, super detailed. So it goes through, you know, like the advertising rates for street press. This is back when street press still existed. Like way too much detail, which you're fully welcome to do if you want to. But what's more important is you just to start to think about, well, okay, how would we reach our potential customers? So more importantly than, you know, going into advertising rates and all this sort of stuff, is really drilling into how would we reach our customers, and making sure that there's a good alignment. So what I mean by that is, if I'm, you know, if I'm the new promoter for the Wiggles, I'm probably not going to be targeting people on Tinder. That's a really stupid example. Do you know what I mean? Like, what I want to be thinking about is, okay, how do I reach the parents of kids that are aged 2 to 5? Where are they likely to be in a virtual or physical sense? So, you know, chances are that they're probably going to be more likely to be on Facebook and Instagram. It's probably going to be the mothers more than the fathers. So maybe there's like parenting Facebook groups that I want to try and get into, or maybe there's particular, I don't know, magazines that they read. So you want to be trying to work out, where would I find my customers, so that I can reach them, and then what messages are going to be most effective with those customers. And so, like for you, Jonty, you're probably going to have a social media presence, but it's probably not going to be the primary vehicle by which you would try and connect with your potential customers. It's probably going to be more direct contact.
Yeah.
And thinking about, okay, who are they? You know, who would buy my services? How am I going to find them? Yeah.
It'd be different to, all the other tasks I've done that involve marketing are very like social media based, and I think like for creative industries as well, like that is more prevalent, I would say, but this one's obviously just going to be a little bit different.
And Holly and Lauren, you know, I don't know what you guys are thinking about in terms of how you're going to get your name out there and connect with potential customers. Like, how do you think you'll approach that?
I think like social media is a big part of it, but also like we're very focused on like not word of mouth, yes, but like also like kind of engaging with artists directly as well.
I think we've been talking about like putting on shows and things like that, and kind of creating a community around it that way, so that people kind of have that familiar I can't say that word. Anyway, people are familiar with the name, and like kind of associate that with like a good show and like good music and all those kinds of things, that like people start to become more comfortable with the brand and the reputation. But yeah, like a lot of our things comes from us showing up to people's shows and being genuinely really interested in their music in that way, and kind of gaining trust that way. That sounds really manipulative, but anyway.
Yeah, but it's demonstrating, you know, like it's giving them a taster, I would say, you know, by sort of showing them I'm interested and committed to what you're doing. So it's demonstrating that you guys are behind them rather than someone who isn't, right? So again, if you're thinking about your competitive landscape, are they more likely to kind of go to someone who's interested in what they're doing and comes to their gigs than someone who's going to other people's gigs or not going to gigs at all?
Yeah, I think the music
yeah.
industry, like marketing, is like being there and doing your in-person networking kind of thing.
Yeah, and then also demonstrating that you've got more than just, you know, someone that turns up to their gigs because their friends do that. So, you know, you want to be, yes, we are behind you and supporting you, and we have these skills and contacts as well. Yeah. Awesome. So what I'm going to do